Hello and welcome back to the Matrix Green Pill podcast. I'm Hilmarie Hutchison, and today I'm so excited to introduce Simone Milasas, a self-made multimillionaire, best-selling author, and the business development manager of Access Consciousness. Simone went from being $187,000 in debt to building a global business empire. She's here to share her insights on achieving financial freedom, expanding businesses internationally, and creating multiple streams of revenue. Simone, wow, so happy to have you here. Welcome and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me here.
So to kick things off, could you share a little bit about your background and what initially led you into the world of business and personal development?
Okay, so from a really young age, I was always interested in business. You know, at school, people would talk about getting married and having kids and what they wanted to study at college and university. And I was two things. I always said, I want to see the world, I need to travel the world, and I'd like to own my own business. And a lot of people would ask me, what sort of business? And I was like, I don't know. For me, I think I just had this idea that through business, you could change anything. For me, business is extremely malleable and you can choose different things. You can change industries. You can change the way people look at the world. Also, from a really young age, I think about 15 or 16 years of age, I looked around and I went, this can't be it. There's got to be something greater than this. Like the trauma and drama that people are choosing, there has to be something different, which sort of led me to what business could I create that could empower others to know that there's a different choice. So I actually originally started a business called Good Vibes for You. You know, I traveled the world. I did leave when I was like 18, 19 and traveled the world for 3 years. And I met some amazing people around the world. And every conversation I had that I was inspired by, I had a notebook and I would write things down. And I came up with a lot of designs from those conversations that I ended up putting on merchandise, on t-shirts, on stickers, on magnets, etc. I started this business called Good Vibes for You, which for me was about getting people to look at life, their choices, and the whole world in a different way. And then I met Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, and was like, oh my goodness, this guy's talking about everything I desired to create. For me, it's like each business I've chosen has led me to the next one and has led me to something different and something greater. Yeah, I would say from a very early age, I knew that there was something different and I knew that I was seeking to explore whatever that was.
What an interesting, for somebody at such a young age to look around and have quite big questions that I think many people never think about. I mean, that is remarkable. Also knowing that you wanted to be a business owner. Did you have mentors or role models in your life that were entrepreneurs that you sort of thought that is the way to go? Or what was it that sparked this interest in you?
And it's interesting that you describe it like that too, because you know when you just live your life and you just think that's normal. I'm going to say it was a little lonely in one aspect because I very early realized everything that I desired to create in the world, I couldn't really talk about it to everybody because I would start to talk and I would see either people's eyes just glass over or they would put me down and sort of be like, oh, you're a dreamer, you know, you can't do this. So I realized really early, okay, I don't think I can talk to everybody about what I'd like to create in the world. I think I need to develop this myself and then see where this leads to. Yes, I had my father. My father was incredible. He was one of the most generous men I've ever met. He was incredibly kind. I had two very different parents. One, my mother was a very mean, cruel lady and was not empowering at all. She was always judging me and always putting me down from the way I looked to what I chose and everything. And then I had my father who was like the antithesis. He was so empowering. He used to say to me all the time, Simone, this is your life. You need to choose it. And I would ask him and say, hey, what about this? And, you know, I'd ask him questions. And he was like, you need to choose. I'll talk to you and I'm here for you, but you need to choose. And he was always saying, you need to choose to find out if this is actually what works for you, whether that was in a relationship or monetarily or business or where I was choosing to live, etc. So I do feel extremely lucky that I had my father because he definitely had my back. And he was an entrepreneur as well. He was a chartered accountant. You know, I grew up with that. you know, when you're a kid and I was like, what are we doing now? We were part owners in a butcher shop, and then there was a picnic table craze and he did that. And then he was importing from India and he was always involved in these different projects. So I got to be around that as well and see how my father was with that and how he chose.
That's excellent. As you say, he was generous and kind, but also empowered you to make your own decisions. He wasn't making you go in a certain direction. He was making you make those choices at an early age so that you could do that as you developed and decided which way you wanted to take your life and which direction you wanted to go.
Yeah, and I think that's a really powerful tool. I've used that my whole life now with everybody I work with as well. It's like I think we need to empower everybody, whether you're in a relationship with them or you work with them, etc. Ask them a question. It's like, well, what do you know about this and what would you like to choose? Because we're all different. And I do get that diversity that we all be is what creates something greater.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about your transformation. So you went from being in debt of $187,000 to being a multimillionaire. Could you share that journey with us? What sparked that transformation and what role your book, Getting Out of Debt Joyfully, played in that journey?
The typical thing occurred for myself is I was, spending way too much money and not earning enough. They say living a champagne lifestyle on a beer budget. I was definitely doing that. You would not have been able to look at me and say, oh, she's in debt or she's in dire straits or living in scarcity, because I would just choose everything. I'd be like, yes, 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 yes. So I was very good at spending money and not so great at really paying attention to the bills. The book that I wrote, it's the second book I ever wrote, Getting Out of Debt Joyfully. Sometimes I think I created myself to be a financial mess so I could write this book and have all of these tools in there. It's not just for people who are in debt. It's for people who actually wish to change any area of their financial reality. I've done everything. I've had no money. I've been in debt. I've tried to prove that I could create things in the world with no money. I was definitely went through that young hippie stage where I was like, I don't need money. I can just, be free and I can do all of this. And then I went, oh, this is really difficult. And I had to move back home with my parents. And I went, okay, maybe I should start making some money. And then I went through a stage of, well, I'll receive money, but I will do good things with it, which is a whole justification for actually receiving rather than just receiving. So I did create myself to be a financial mess. And then I met Gary Douglas, the founder of Access, and Dr. Dane here, and he's the co-creator, started to listen to them about using these money tools. To be honest, I didn't like the tools. I thought that they were not that practical. I didn't lean towards them and I wasn't that enthusiastic and excited about it. And yet I knew I had to do something different because the way I was creating myself financially wasn't working. And I made my demand of myself for 3 months. I would start using these tools and see if something changed. I did. I actually wrote myself a note in a calendar at the end of 3 months because I thought I can just go back to doing what I was doing. I started using the Access Consciousness tools with money and I noticed that it wasn't like I had a whole bunch of money at the end. My point of view, my judgment, the energy around money had changed. And I noticed that. And I was like, okay, I would like more of that. So I kept using the tools, eventually got myself out of debt. I spoke about my father earlier. And I think one of the aspects of why we create ourselves to be financially not stable is our point of view. One of the points of view that I realized I had was my father had said to me, as long as his children needed him, he would stay alive. He was quite a bit older than my mother. I remember thinking, oh gosh, I want to make sure that my dad stays alive because he was such a contribution. And I realized, and this is an insane point of view, but we tend to create these insane points of view. I realized I was creating myself to be a financial mess so my father could still be alive. And I had this awareness. And if you have an awareness, you can change it. That's the beautiful aspect of how we be in this world. So I spoke to my father and he said to me, what are you doing? And I said, I know. So from that moment, I started to change the way I was with money and with wealth creation and with finances. I totally turned it all around. Here I am today. I have investments all over the world. I have money. I've made money. And then you have different things that show up once you have money as well. So I don't think it gets to this point where you're like, whoa, life is perfect and wonderful. There's always something else that shows up that you need to handle and deal with. And it's how you handle it and how you deal with it is the important aspect. I believe.
That's remarkable. So it all comes down to mindset and to be aware of why you're making the choices you're making, because that then can help you shift to where you need to be. Because until you're aware of the things you're doing, you'll just continue doing them without actually realizing the path that you're actually choosing.
Yeah, I mean, Einstein said it so well when he said the first sign of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And I think that's what so many of us do in all areas of our life, is just keep doing that same thing and expecting something to be different. It's like, no, you actually have to pivot and change the trajectory and choose something different. And then things can change.
Absolutely. So true. Now let's shift a little bit and talk about access consciousness. So you joined Access Consciousness. You're the business development manager. You've helped it grow from 6 to 176 countries worldwide. Wow, that's fantastic. And Access Consciousness has also seen significant growth in the Middle East recently. Can you tell us more about the expansion and also the region's unique response to personal development?
We did expand quite quickly, and it wasn't in a linear scale. If you looked at a company and said, okay, what are we going to choose next? Where are we going to go? Like, essentially it was, America, Australia, New Zealand, Canada were the first 4 countries. So they're all English speaking countries. So you would think that we would move on to more English speaking countries. And that's not how it showed up. The next country we went to was Italy. And then the next one was Korea. And it was based on, I'm going to say, listening. Not everybody tends to listen, and you need to listen to those whispers of what is your business asking for? Who's asking for it? Where are they? And locate that around the world. I mean, we have access to the entirety of the world now, with everything that we have going on, very different from when I grew up. We didn't even have a mobile phone. So you didn't have internet, etc. So it was different. And now you have access to the entirety of the world. We did increase a lot in the Middle East. And I'm going to put that down to around 2020, 21, that whole debacle that we all lived through. We did a lot more online. We were already set up for online. Like, we have a lot of seminars that are live and online. And we were very set up for that. Zoom actually rang us and said, hey, how are you using us? Because a lot of our classes will be translated, some up to 17 languages, but the majority of them are between 6 and 12 languages for every class that we have. So I think in the Middle East, we became a lot more accessible because every class we did then became online and it wasn't just live. That's when we grew a lot, and definitely by word of mouth. Like, we hardly do any advertising or anything like that. It's, yes, of course, we're on social media, etc., but it's the word of mouth. And when people's lives change, I think their friends and their family are like, what are you doing? You're happier. Maybe their relationship has changed, or their business has increased, or like their point of view around money has shifted. There's not that scarcity or the lack or the trauma and drama in their life anymore. So, the old saying of it was like wildfire throughout the Middle East. And in the next, this month in December, I'm off to Riyadh in Saudi Arabia for the first time ever. And I'm doing a business done different class there. And then I'm off to Abu Dhabi and doing relationships done different class. So we go to the Middle East a lot now.
Amazing. And I love what you said, the importance of listening to see where your business wants to go, always the right next thing, instead of trying to force it down a path that might not be the right one, but you, through listening, figuring out what the next move is going to be.
And it's actually easier. A lot of people try and make it really hard by trying to work out what's next and doing that linear scale. The one thing I always say is, tell me one day where you went to bed at night and you went, wow, today showed up exactly the way I thought it was going to show up. Life doesn't work like that. Business doesn't work like that either. So if you are in question with everything and you are willing to head in a certain direction, but then know when you need to change and choose something different. Driving down a different road, it's like choosing a different time to meet up. I mean, people go to the judgment of like, oh, I can't make this time. We need to cancel. We need to reschedule. And it always works out for the better. So if we're willing to follow the energy and listen to those whispers, my sense is that's when we start to create something so different and something greater in our businesses and in our lives.
Absolutely fantastic. Can you talk about the 5 key strategies you believe every business owner should know, especially when navigating challenging times?
Yeah, look, these are a little different, and I would put these into every aspect of my life as well. Number 1 is allowance. Number 2 would be trust. Number 3 is honor. and number 4 is vulnerability, and number 5 is gratitude. I think if you have that for yourself in everything that you choose, like you are an allowance of yourself, you are trusting yourself. Like I see people give away that trust, and, we call it these different things like gut instinct, or, you have a feeling or a vibe or whatever terminology you use. But when something lands and you go, yeah, that's it. Trust yourself. Trust that holds hands with the honoring. It's like, what is honoring of you, honoring of the business, etc. The vulnerability, I think, is a really big one. For some weird reason in business, people don't tend to be as vulnerable. It's like when they put on a suit to go to work, it's like they put on this armored suit that is hiding who they be from the world. In truth, who we be in the world is what creates the difference. I do not think you need to change who you be when you are in the workplace, when you are in a meeting. I so value when I meet someone and I'm talking to them and they're totally being them. That's when I get excited. That's when I'm like, ooh, what can we play with? It's like, what can we contribute to each other? What can we create? And then having that gratitude for yourself and gratitude for everything that goes on. As I said before, life is not this, this thing where you wake up and everything shows up and it's all roses and wonderful. No, there's some really hard stuff that you need to deal with and you need to handle it. But what if you were grateful for every single day and how that shows up, and grateful for every possibility that shows up with every person that you meet, every interaction and engagement that you have in business and in life? Again, it's allowance, trust, honor, vulnerability, and gratitude. And when you have that with you, you can also have that with your business. And when you have it with your business, you can have it with your colleagues, you can have it with everybody.
Right. So it has to start with you. First of all, you have to allow yourself those things, the allowance, the trust, honor, vulnerability, and gratitude. Once you can give that to yourself or make space for yourself to have those things, then you can then pass that on to employees, customers, and in your business in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can use that in relationships and everything as well. Because if you're expecting somebody else to be grateful for you, but you're not grateful for you, what direction are you heading? If we all really acknowledge the capacities that we have, and we each choose what we are brilliant at, that's the world that I'd like to live in. That's the world that I see we require. Like, look at governments and leadership and everything. If we have that energy with that and that allowance and that trust and the honor and the vulnerability and the gratitude, we can create something really different here in the world.
Well, thank you so much for unpacking all of that and giving us those tips. If our audience wanted to know more about these 5 strategies, are they in a book? Are they in your trainings? Or where can they learn more about that?
We do talk about them in the majority of the classes that I facilitate, probably because it's one of my favorite tools. I do have a class on my website. It's called the 5 Elements of Intimacy, because that's what these are, is the elements of intimacy. But we do talk about them in Business Done Different and also in the Relationships Done Different classes as well.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Well, it's been brilliant talking to you and hearing about your journey so far. It's absolutely fantastic. Now we've come to the segment of our show where I'll ask you some rapid fire questions, our version of a game show.
Okay.
You talk about avoiding the hesitation trap. Can you just unpack that for us in a really easy, short way?
Most people like to do, like dancing like a waltz. They like to do this hesitation waltz rather than just choose. It's not about getting it right or wrong. If you choose, you'll find out. If you taste something and you're not sure if you like it or not, once you choose. So stop waiting and just choose.
You also say there's no such thing as a bad business decision, only opportunities for growth. Can you elaborate a little bit about that?
I'm in my early 50s now. If I stopped every time I made a quote unquote bad business decision, I'd be a mess. Whereas every single time I have chosen something that you're like, ooh, that might not have been my smartest choice, instead of judging myself, I ask, okay, what awareness did I gain from this? Because we're always gaining awareness. You become a more successful, greater person in business and in life and living when you actually, again, the first one, willing to make choices and gain awareness from every choice you make.
Many aspiring entrepreneurs struggle with self-doubt. What advice would you offer to somebody facing self-doubt?
I'm going to go back to what we were talking about with that 5 elements of intimacy. Trust you. Trust you. What do you know? Nobody knows what you know. So ask yourself, it's like, what do you know about this? And a very successful businessman in Australia, Dick Smith, he was interviewed once and they said to him, what's the key to success? And he said, I surround myself by capable people and listen. And I think that's a great tool to use, is listen to everybody, but then you choose. Choose what works for you. And you might stumble and fall, but you're going to get back up again.
And I love that idea of surrounding yourself with people that are better than you. I think that's a really smart strategy.
Yeah, I do too. And a little bit on that is most people don't want to have someone who's better than them because they go, oh, well, this person will take over something. No, it's like if you surround yourself by people who are better at accounting, sales, talking, pitching, all that sort of thing, then you might become useless momentarily, but you will end up creating more.
Absolutely. And we all should then work to our own strengths, because then we get the most out of that as well.
Exactly.
What is the best advice you've ever received?
What if the purpose of life was to have fun?
Oh, I like that.
It totally surprised me when I heard it, and it made me a little cranky when I first heard it. And then I was like, what is this? And I started to explore it and I went, oh, we try and make things significant and meaningful rather than, well, what if the purpose of life is to have fun?
Oh, I love that. Very good. What is one thing you do every day, no matter how busy you get?
I wake up and I acknowledge my body. I've had a fair bit of stuff going with my body over the years. I've learned that you can have all the money in the world and all the success, but if you don't actually acknowledge your body and be grateful for your body, what's it all good for? So the first thing I do is actually say hi to my body and say hi to the earth, have a moment and celebrate that. And then I choose.
And that goes back to also what you said earlier about gratitude, right? So it starts right there in the beginning of the day, gratitude for your body and for what you have around you. I love that.
It's not just something you tick off. It's like, I am super grateful for my body. Just over a year ago, I ended up in hospital because I couldn't walk and I was just so busy. And I realized, you know what? I need to listen to my body and I need to choose with my body, not from conflict with my body.
Absolutely. Very, very good advice. Excellent. Well, thank you for playing along. That wasn't too hard. Now we've come to our signature question, our green pill moment question. So what green pill advice would you give to your younger self?
It's going to go with that question of the philosophy of how to live life is to have way too much fun and stop stressing. And don't judge yourself. Do not judge your choices. Just keep choosing and choosing and choosing.
Excellent advice. And I think that's excellent advice for all of us and also for our audience. I'm sure they're going to benefit from that advice. Thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your fantastic and inspiring story to go from debt to being a millionaire. My goodness, that's something people think they can only dream about. But if they come listen to your courses, read your books, then you have given them some of the tools along the way that you've used to reach the success that you've done.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Now, before we say goodbye, could you please tell our listeners where they can find and follow you? And we'll also put this in the show notes.
Sure. I have a very good name for Google because there is no other Simone Milasas. So my website, Facebook, Instagram, everything is under my name, Simone Milasas. So it's SIMONE MILASAS.
Brilliant. Thank you for joining me today. I wish you an Access Consciousness all the very best.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for being here.
To our listeners, if you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to share it with your friends, subscribe to our podcast, and leave us a 5-star review. Your support means the world to us.
If you enjoy our conversations, please like and subscribe. See you next Wednesday.